All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Sunday, December 22nd. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. So, Clayton, you're back. And what did you think of the two episodes that we did in your absence with guest host, Wannabe VP of Interns, Christopher, guest host, Danny of I Screen, You Scream 4, number 4
Number
movies? Those
4.
were the people who were holding down your chair while your butt was elsewhere. Did you love those episodes? Got to know off the bat.
I didn't listen. I don't listen to episodes that I'm not on.
Okay, so
I'm
you're
I'm
missing
the
out.
I'm the opposite of Kirk. Kirk doesn't listen to episodes he's on. I don't listen to episodes I'm not on.
Okay. But you had the chance to get the greatest gift anyone could get, which is to listening to a fresh episode of the BO Boys. You
Mhm.
finally had the position, the thing that I'm never allowed to do because I'm always here. I'm always on
Not
the
true.
show.
Not true.
And I never get to just sit back and enjoy the greatness of this show. You had that chance. Why wouldn't you have taken that and listened to me and Christopher and Danny mix it up on the greatest show on radio?
Well, with all due respect to Danny, um, the greatness of the show includes me. That's what
It
makes
includes
it
you,
so great. So, I mean, I feel like
and due
that's the
respect to
problem is
Christopher, you
that
missed that.
we can never I didn't miss a thing. I'm like, yeah, I didn't miss a thing. Um,
You're Aerosmith.
well, I was gonna say that, but they don't wanna miss a thing. They don't say I didn't miss a thing.
I think it's implied that they also don't miss. They don't
Okay.
want to, and therefore they don't miss it.
Yeah.
But so you're not including Danny, you're not including Christopher in
I
that.
said what I said. I said what I
Okay, he
said,
said
Pat,
what
and
he
you
said.
interrupted me. Okay, what
Okay.
I said is that we will never be able to have an episode unless one of us has a brain injury after recording an episode. We will never enjoy the greatness of this show the way our wannabe boys, wannabe girls, wannabe people
People.
get to enjoy it in its purest form. In
Okay,
its true
because
form. In its true form. We will never have that unless we have a terrible brain injury.
immediately after the episode, which I think is on the table for sure. For you, definitely. For me, possible, but I could definitely see you. We stop recording, and then you immediately trip and fall down a flight of stairs, brain injury. You don't remember anything about the show you just recorded. That
Mhm.
is very, very possible in the next 3 to 6 episodes, I would say.
Yeah.
So, well, you missed out. Those are great episodes, but glad you're back, of course. And we didn't say that we were beheading you and kicking your head around on the chat shows. I know those are things you were concerned about last time you stopped doing the show for a couple episodes. We didn't do any of that this time, so don't worry. None of that happened on this show. We were very respectful. Christopher, Danny, myself, very respectful.
I'm
But
sure Danny was very respectful. He's a respectful kid.
as is Christopher. So not as respectable though. I gotta say is the opening weekend on one of the big new releases this weekend. Not nearly as much respect for that as we have for Danny and Christopher. So Clayton, now that you're back, could you get back in the swing of things and give us a plow for the box office weekend of Friday, December 20th, 2024?
Number 1, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 made $62 million in its first weekend of release. Number 2, Mufasa, The Lion King made $35 million in its first weekend of release. Number 3, Wicked made $13.5 million, down 40%. It lost 393 theaters. It's at $383.9 million in its fifth weekend of release. Number 4, Moana 2 made $13.1 million, down 51%. It lost 400 theaters. It's at $359 million in its fourth weekend of release. Number 5, another newbie, Homestead by Angel Studios, made $6 million in its first frame. And let's keep going because we got to get to Craven. Number 6, Gladiator 2 made $4.4 million, down 42%. It hemorrhaged theaters, losing 827 theaters. It's at $153.9 million in its 5th weekend of release. And number 7, Craven the Hunter, $3.1 million, down 72%. No theater change. It's at $17.4 million in its 2nd weekend of release.
So, Clayton, we're going to get into the new releases, but since you weren't on the results episode last week, you haven't had much of a chance to talk about this Craven the Hunter situation.
Yeah,
Terrible opening weekend,
terrible.
and now a Morbius-esque drop. Though it didn't drop, just shows how much doo-doo Folly Doo-Doo had a few months ago. It didn't have as bad of a drop as the second weekend of Joker Folly Doo-Doo, but this Craven situation, while you were out on leave, what is your take now that you get to unload on Craven, Aaron Taylor Johnson, his chances at Bond, any of it? Go for it. What's your Craven take?
Oh, it is what we thought it was. Absolutely. A disaster. Sony shuttering their their Spidey villain movies, which they should do. Um, no shot at Bond. I mean, if he ever had a shot at Bond, this killed it 100%. Um, yeah, it's a disaster. Nobody wanted to see this movie. There wasn't even sort of a morbid fascination with it. It doesn't feel like
Mhm.
the way Madam Web had.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the memes that Morbius had.
Yep.
So, I mean, Madam Web is gonna come out as the winner here, in all these movies, other than the Venom movies, of course.
Yes.
But Madam Web is the big winner in that really there's people who still stick up for that movie as not as terrible as the rest of this group. And I've never seen that movie. Did you end up seeing that movie?
I did end up watching it on streaming on Streamo, with a lot of fast forwarding. I was skipping through, but I did. You could officially say I saw it. You know,
Mhm.
that could go on my death certificate someday, is that I did see Madam Web. And yeah, it kind of is the big winner, I guess, because of the soda can scene. That there's people who really stick up for that scene where Dakota Johnson as Madam Web couldn't open up a soda can for about 30 or 40 minutes straight. And I think that is the most notable thing of any of these three. And the second most notable thing is the Morbius re-release. And I think
Mhm.
Craven the Hunter, the most notable thing will be it will cost Aaron Taylor Johnson the role of Bond. I agree. He
Yeah.
cannot get it after this point. Um,
No.
I want to throw this out to you because I don't know if you saw this. The great podcast Jesus himself, Kirk Minahan, just days ago on Twitter X threw this out there. He basically said, because now there's casting news. Is Josh O'Connor from Challenger is going to get the role, and Barbara Broccoli is saying that she doesn't know who's going to get it. It's in disarray. Kirk Minahan threw this out there as the solution. Do a Bond with old man Bond and bring back Pierce Brosnan for one movie. And that's how you just get a Bond out there in the next few years. What do you think of that? Of Pierce Brosnan coming back as Bond for just one film to say, look at this old man, but a fun old man, because that was what Brosnan's 007 was. He was fun. What do you think of that podcast Jesus saying put Pierce Brosnan back? And you know what? If you do that, you got to give Kirk a cameo in the movie because it was his idea.
Mhm, mhm. That's how that works.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm all for it. It is hard though because it does feel very nostalgia baity. But I guess, Pierce was a generation's Bond,
Hmm.
and I think it'd be fun to do something like that as a one-off. I mean, I think there's too much worry about what's the timeline here. It's like, just pretend that the last ones didn't happen and just shut
Yep.
off your mind and watch a Bond movie. I mean, I think that's what these movies are about. Like, there's a continuity to this latest series of Bond films that I think, sort of drug it down, in my opinion, where it should
Yeah.
just be like, this guy's out there, you know, shooting Russians, banging
Mhm.
chicks. I mean,
Mhm.
and that's what this is. That's not me saying this. This is what this series is. This is just the essence of this series,
Yep.
right? Cool gadgets,
Cool
and that's
gadgets.
the
Yep.
thing, right? So it would be interesting to see an older man in that milieu.
Yes, yes. I think that's the way to go, and it's you toss off one joke. Pierce Brosnan walks into a room, and they take the tuxedo, and he says something like, "Oh, someone." It feels like someone else wore my jacket, and then Q could be like, "Oh, some douchebag." Yeah, there was some douchebag who tried to put on your jacket, and he's like, "Oh, okay. I'm glad that douchebag is gone." Just a quick one-liner, very pithy. We know who the douchebag is. They say douchebag a few times and they move on.
This is sounding like National Lampoon's 007.
No, no, this is a serious 007 film, but you got to do the douchebag. Would douchebag was in my tuxedo line just to move
Mhm.
on from Daniel Craig and his
Yeah,
Bond, and then you move on, and then you
yeah.
do a straight Bond flick, but you just have that quick one line about my jacket feels like a small man was in this, like it's not stretched out, it's the opposite of stretched out because like a
Oh,
small
yeah, like,
douchebag
is
was in it.
the crotch is too tight.
The
This can't be
crotches.
my suit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something like that. And
There's
then
no
you call
room
him a
for my
douchebag.
hog, my famous hog.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Brosnan very quickly that he puts on the tuxedo, says that there's no room for my famous hog in this. And then he moves on, and you do the 007 movie at that point. So
Do
I
you have a
think Kirk
cold,
nailed it.
Pat?
I've got a little bit of a cold there that popped up when we were talking about Pierce Brosnan saying that there's no room for his famous hog in this
Yeah,
tuxedo. So it was
yeah.
acting up there for a bit. But I'm back now. I think Pierce Brosnan should be back. Great suggestion. But if they do that, Kirk's got a cameo in the movie because it was his tweet, and no one would
Yeah.
have thought of that until he tweeted it. So, Barbara Broccoli, do the right thing, bring back Pierce Brosnan as Bond, give Kirk a cameo in the movie because it was his tweet that started this all. And I think that's a surefire hit. I don't think it's a Indiana Jones reboot situation, bringing
No.
Pierce back, because I do think it's something that people would be hungry for in a way that they didn't want another indie, but I do think they'd want another Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye situation.
And is Pierce Brosnan, he's gotta be younger than Harrison Ford, right?
If he's not younger age wise, he's definitely younger mentally. Because Harrison
Yeah.
Ford has been old in his head for pretty much since he played Han Solo. He's became an old man immediately, whereas Pierce Brosnan does seem like he still enjoys things, and I
Mhm.
think that will be such a fresh take on Bond is having a Bond who doesn't hate being Bond. That'll be nice. Audiences, I
Ye
think, will respond to that.
Yeah, so Harrison Ford is 12 years older than Pierce Brosnan, so that makes a difference. Pierce
Yeah,
Brosnan's in his 70s, Harrison Ford's in his 80s. Harrison Ford has addled his brain with pot.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that takes a toll. It
yep.
does. I'm gonna
It
say it.
does.
Listen, I'm
Yeah.
not going all Nancy Reagan, just say no here. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there's scientific evidence that it addles your brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if, Pierce Brosnan enjoys the sticky icky as much as Harrison Ford, but I don't think anybody does, next to maybe Snoop Dogg and,
Martha
Kevin
Stewart.
Smith.
And
Martha
Kevin
Stewart
Smith.
loves
Those are
it
the
too,
big
yeah.
4. Those are the big 4 potheads, famous potheads. Cheech Marin was edged out in the last few years by Harrison Ford in the big
I guess
4.
Seth Rogen's still in there.
Seth Rogen, I think him and Kevin Smith flip-flop depending on which one has a movie to promote. So right now I
Mhm.
would say Kevin Smith is in because he's still promoting probably the PVOD release of the 420 movie. or the 430 movie. He
4:30 movie.
he would have wanted to call it the 420 movie, but the financiers wouldn't allow him to do that. So I would
Mhm.
say, yeah, Harrison Ford is in that big four of famous potheads. Pierce Brosnan, definitely not. He's a guy. I'm sure he likes his brandy. He definitely
Mhm.
likes to unwind, but it's not the sticky icky. His brain is not addled. He could definitely play Bond tomorrow.
Mhm.
But either way, Aaron Taylor Johnson, you cannot do it after this Craven the Hunter. I actually do want to report to you, I witnessed firsthand a case of the Craven effect in real life. Um,
Okay.
and this is a tough one because now this is one I'm going to have to deal with personally because I went to go see a film a few nights ago, Thursday night, saw The Brutalist in New York City, AMC, Lincoln, the theater, other than maybe AMC Burbank in California. This is the theater. And I saw it with my wife. And we're going up that escalator. Clayton, that famous escalator in AMC Lincoln,
Mhm.
going to the top floor because, of course, that's where we got to go. And we pass a Craven the Hunter poster, and my wife looks at me and she said, I am getting a little emotional here
Yeah,
because this
yeah.
is my wife, Clayton.
This is your wife, yeah.
This is my wife. And I'm gonna have to deal with this, and I'm gonna have to deal with the insurance here. She looked at me and she said, didn't that movie come out a long time ago? Clayton, this is not me trying to put on a segment that's going to go viral for the show and making up a tall tale, saying something that didn't happen, saying it happened because I know the papers will pick up on it. This happened to me a few days ago. My wife looked at me and said, didn't Craven the Hunter come out a few years ago?
I mean,
And
this
I had to
affects
look at her.
families.
Yeah.
This affects families,
And when it
your
affects other
family.
families, yeah, well, that's the
It's
thing. When it affects
yeah.
other families, who cares? I'm going to say
Who
right
ca
here, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. But now we're talking my wife, we're talking my family. And I had to look at my wife and I knew immediately the diagnosis. This woman who I share a life with
Mhm.
suffers from the Craven effect.
You never think
And
it's
it's
gonna happen to you, especially a box office pundit, someone
right,
so knowledgeable about
right.
movie release dates. It can happen to somebody in your life.
Yes, in my own home. And it made me start to think what's next because I don't know what's next. We haven't taken her to see a medical professional yet. And also it made me think, is she not paying attention to my show for her to have been able to get to this point? And
Yeah,
so it's a two-pronged thing of like she's suffering from this debilitating condition and what's going to happen next, or what's insurance going to say when we ask for treatment options, but
mhm.
also is she not listening to the BO boys? So there's a lot of things I'm going to have to face head on after what she said on that escalator.
But I will say, to defend your wife, not that she needs defense,
Mhm.
I do think this is a powerful disease, and
Yeah.
even people who listen to this show religiously can still suffer from it. I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged is that it is not a disease of ignorance,
Mm. Right.
you know?
Right.
It is a serious mental issue that can
Yeah.
affect anyone.
Yeah. And now I'm going to have to deal with it. And I will, though, for the audience, because of course, my wife is very important to me and her privacy is very important to me. But the needs of our audience are as or more important, depending
Mhm.
on monetization of that audience and so on. I will be covering everything about her Craven effect and its effects and what happens next on this show. So we
Mhm.
have right here, I don't want to call her a guinea pig. I don't want to call her an experiment or anything like that. But we will be acting as if because we will be reporting on it and her case and maybe her worsening case of the Craven effect on episodes of the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think I mean, that's very brave of you to use your wife's life for your podcast and for content. I think that's a very brave act, and,
Yeah.
I applaud you.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we were there in the 90s when Howard Stern had to do it. He
Mhm.
had to, the next morning, talk about what was going on in his life and his marriage for the fans of the Howard Stern show, and it paid off for him handsomely. Sure, ended up getting divorced. That marriage has failed. You know, I don't know if they've ever talked, all that. And that could be what happens here. That could be what happens here. But his listeners needed that, and it led to a huge contract with Sirius. So,
Yeah,
not saying that's my main focus here when I report on my wife's worsening Craven effect, but it's in the it's one of the factors for sure, for sure.
and we have yet to know, since it's such a new affliction, the amount of, marriages that survive it.
Hmm.
Because with a lot of afflictions, that people leave,
People leave.
things end, and the percentage is pretty high,
Yeah.
for men, because men just bail immediately.
Yes,
Um,
and and you can't blame him for it in advance. Got to say that you can't blame him for it.
yeah, and so the percentages will come out. I mean, it would be very fitting if it ended up being that, 72% of men,
Mm,
who are in relationship with someone with the Craven effect leave, because that
mm.
would be the second weekend drop. That would be very
Yes,
interesting, and
yes.
ironic, and we all want our statistics to be ironic.
Yes, yes. So the
Um,
people who analyze data, keep that in mind. If it's like 71%, 73%, 70,
Tweak
just
it.
say it's the same drop as the second weekend of Craven the Hunter, because it's just so ironic, and that's in the end what numbers should be. Yeah.
And statistically, there's like a swing one way or the other, like
Yeah,
a couple
exactly.
percentage points, so you can swing it. You can
Yeah.
swing it.
Yeah.
Just swing it.
Uh, just swing it. Just swing it, and we'll see what happens here. We'll see what happens here. She's going through this. We're going through it together for now, and we will the most important thing is we will document every step in her probably worsening case of the Craven effect on
Yeah.
this show, for as long as we have a relationship. So, more to
Uh,
come on that.
and Pet, before we get off Craven, because I think this ties into, something that happened this weekend. Do you think that all this Craven sort of, I don't wanna say hatred, because nobody hates this movie, it's just apathy.
Yeah, Mishigash.
Yeah, takes place, a lot of it looks like it takes place, in the, what would you say, like, the jungle, or I don't know, where animals dwell,
Nature, nature,
nature.
okay, I see where you're going here. Talk more
And
about
and
nature, yeah.
and what movie opened to a pitiful $35 million? Could people be like, Craven soured me for any sort of movie that has to do with lions and nature and hunted animals? Like, could Craven have killed Mufasa?
Let's get into it here because for years, the accepted theory was Scar killed Mufasa. If you watch the original 1990s Lion King cartoon or the 2019 remake, on screen, it's Scar killing Mufasa. Box office wise, could Craven the Hunter have killed Mufasa? I think that is very possible. Let's get into it. So, this Mufasa opening weekend, Clayton, it opened number two. Number
Mhm.
two, a Lion King franchise flick opened number two at the box office to $35 million. Its per screen average of $8,000 is half of what Sonic 3 did per screen this weekend. Um, what do you think? I mean, let's start there. Is Craven responsible for this ghastly, and I don't use that word lightly, ghastly Mufasa opening weekend?
And I just wanna point something out here too. Sonic opened in less theaters.
Yes.
It
Yes.
had 3,761 screens,
Yep.
to 44,100.
Yep.
So, I mean, this movie, Mufasa okay. So,
Mufasa. Mufasa, Mufasa, Mufasa.
Mufasa,
Why?
Mufasa, Mufasa. Why? So, this movie also could, and we texted about this a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, it could be one of those movies that is the consensus, everybody can see this movie over the holidays. So we're taking baby, we're taking mama, we're taking dad, we're taking, adopted
Grandpa.
kids, we're taking grandkids, we're taking uncles, we're taking aunts.
Yeah.
That could be the possibility here. But I do think if there was an actual interest in this movie, like a genuine interest in this movie, it would have done better. 35 is pathetic.
It's
That is,
pathetic.
like, disgusting.
Yeah.
And, I know that they were battling Sonic. Sonic has its hardcore fans, as you see, they came out.
Mhm.
I think Sonic is a movie that's gonna do really well over Christmas too. I think this 62 is low because of people waiting. Like, I
Yes.
do think that this is gonna be a situation where it was like, Wicked didn't do as much in the first weekend because people were waiting for Thanksgiving to go and see
Mhm.
it, and I think
Mhm.
that Sonic is gonna be that, more than Mufasa. I just think that, um, it might have come out too close to Craven, and people don't wanna think about lions and tigers and whatever else is in monkeys, I guess, are in the movies. Is there
There's
a
monkeys
rhino in
though in
both?
Wicked. There's monkeys in Wicked. So I mean, when
Flying
we can't
monkeys.
throw all, there's flying monkeys, but we can't just throw the idea of animals and the idea of monkeys under the bus because
Wicked's not
Wicked,
about flying monkeys.
but you
Mufasa's
know
about
they're
a
in it.
lion.
But you know they're in it, and it
Do
didn't
you
keep people
know?
from going to see Wicked. I do think if you go see Wicked that there will be an element of monkeys in that movie.
Ma
A
that's
and
where
possibly even a lion because it's a Wizard of Oz situation. So I think
Pat,
you could
you're
expect that
stretching
maybe
here. You're stretching here. People went and saw Wicked because they love the musical and, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, and that's why they went. They weren't the there it wasn't a lion that reached out and grabbed Cynthia Erivo's, finger in those in that interview. It wasn't
fair,
a lion. It wasn't the
fair.
Cowardly Lion. It was, Ariana Grande. So don't say that Wicked, people were extrapolating that there was gonna be flying monkeys and lions in that
They knew
movie.
there'd be flying monkeys. That I will not give an inch on. If you go to Wicked, you know you would have to deal with monkeys. People knew that. There would be flying monkeys. I guess I just don't want to as much of a disaster as Craven is, and the fact that the Craven effect is real. My wife is suffering from it. I don't want to blame Craven for what Mufasa did this weekend, and I don't want to blame all animals and all nature as the reason why Mufasa open to less than Joker, open to less than Morbius. You know, this is on Mufasa. It is not on all animals. Hashtag
Mhm,
not all animals when we
mhm.
talk about this opening weekend of Mufasa. That is my point. I do think Craven could maybe spoil the well a little bit, but I do think if you had a real animal movie, if you had a Sing movie opening this weekend, people would not be put off by animals so much that they wouldn't go see it. It is about
Mhm.
Mufasa. Um, I mean,
So you
are you sticking with? Do you think it's the fault of just the existence of animals? Why Mufasa opened so low?
No, no, what I'm saying is that I think Craven, didn't help.
Hmm.
I
It didn't
think
help,
that
sure.
yeah, I don't think it helped. But in the long run, I think this people didn't want this. I don't even think people know. I can't even really tell you what this story is. Like, I think that's the thing is like, uh, we love The Lion King, and we saw
Hmm.
it in 2 different versions, and those were both hits.
Yep.
But, uh, I just don't see the I think we just assumed that people would just eat whatever Disney fed them,
Mhm.
and Disney was sort of on a hot streak, and now I feel like, "Oh, were we really sort of just, like, buying the hype that anybody would care about this?" Because I just don't feel any passion, from anybody about a Mufasa movie.
Right. Well, okay, I think we should take it back to that 2019 Lion King remake. The
Mhm.
the the quote unquote live action remake. Of course, it was a giant hit, billion dollar baby, open to 190 domestic. But people did not like that movie. I think it's pretty fair to say that people went because of the sense of obligation. They went because Disney was on such a hot streak in 2019. You know, the Aladdin movie that spring did great, everything. But I don't think people like that. So when this Mufasa movie came out, I do think people were like, I wash my hands of at least this live action Lion King. I don't think anyone wanted more of what 2019 Lion King was giving them.
Well, I think 2019, Lion King also had Jon Favreau as the director,
Yes.
and, he was hot from, you know, being one of the architects of the MCU. People forget
Hmm.
about that. He's had, big hits other than, MCU movies, as a director. So I think that had something to do with it as well.
Hmm.
Um, I feel bad for Barry Jenkins, in the
Yes.
sense that, you know, listen, he took a paycheck, and I'm glad, and I hope that it cleared.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, yeah, that's the question. Did it clear?
but but this is going to be sort of bad for him unless
Hmm.
this really does leg out. But even if it does leg out, like, I mean, does this do a Greatest Showman? Does this do a, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish?
Right.
I mean, that's
Not Jungle Cruise, a Jumanji
Jumanji.
situation. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the people it seems like audiences like this, right? Didn't it get a pretty good audience score?
I think in the 80s, I think that the problem is this movie is starting so much lower than you would want, 35 million. And yes, over Christmas, the next 2 weeks, you're gonna get basically it's a Saturday every day for the next 2 weeks. So, you don't wanna we don't wanna do the thing because, like, Avatar 2 opened to, like, 80,000,000 and became the biggest movie of all time. So, it's like, these next 2 weeks, it's all weekends, everyone's gonna go to the theater. Mufasa is gonna get a lot of people to go, but it is starting so low that it is clear there is just not enthusiasm for this movie. And I do think the general public does not want photorealistic animated animals. I think that the bigger problem is like Lion King 2019, this movie does not seem fun at all. It is
Mhm.
scary when animals look real, not cartoonish, but they are talking and emoting. That is
Mhm.
scary, and I don't think that is what is gonna do big business on Christmas, is these animals looking like real animals, but also talking.
Mhm.
Um,
Uh,
I mean, what do you think of that, of the sort of, like, what is the promise of this Mufasa movie? Is it even supposed to be a good time, or is it supposed to be a drama? Like, I don't think audiences know what they're getting out of this Mufasa movie.
it does look a lot like Homework.
Yes. Yeah.
It looks like a movie that you would be forced to watch when you go to I remember when I was a kid and you would go to, like, a museum or something like that, and they would have a movie theater, and you'd have
Mhm.
to watch a movie, and you'd be like, "Oh, I really hope that it's a cool movie." Like, I hope they show,
Ace
like,
Ventura: When Nature Calls.
yeah, and then it turns out it's this movie about lions and they talk, and it sucks. And you're
Yes.
like, "Oh, so movies can be this too? Like, they're not all Ace Ventura?" Like, that is heartbreaking, and that's what this
Yes.
feels like. You know, you drag a kid to this and they're like, "Oh, movies sorta suck
Yes.
sometimes."
Yes. It's a Planet Earth. It's a
Mhm.
Richard this Mufasa movie feels like it should not be starring Pomona and Pumbaa. Is that their names?
Yeah,
Pomona and
you nailed it.
Pumbaa?
Yep.
It should not be starring Pomona and Pumbaa. It should be narrated by Sir Richard Attenborough or Sir
Mhm.
David Attenborough, whichever one of them is that narrator and not the actor.
No, you're right, it's both.
Yeah. And I'm sure they go both ways. Both Attenboroughs go both ways. They do
They do.
nature documentaries, they do acting in Jurassic Park movies. But that
They
is what
show up when the other
Mufasa
one's sick and nobody knows.
nobody knows. Yeah, it's a Olsen twins deal, which you
Mhm.
don't know which one you're getting. Sometimes they're both there, and it's they're always wearing like trash bags, and it's stylish. That's the Attenboroughs,
They're always
but
high, though. You can
they're
guarantee that.
they're not in the top four with Snoop Dogg, Martha Stewart, Kevin Smith, and Harrison Ford, but they're always banging on that door. But they're high, so they're banging on the wrong door across the street.
Yeah.
Um, but that is what Mufasa feels like. It's an Attenborough's Planet Earth movie and not a fun Pomona and Pumbaa movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
and that's and I think, man, uh, it's so hard to talk about this movie because, you know, neither of us have seen it and neither of us have any interest in it, but I do think that speaks volumes for why it's doing what it's doing. Now, is there anybody in your life now, obviously, we know that your wife is in a bad way, and I wouldn't
yeah,
mention Mufasa to her, because you just don't know what the mention of other movies is gonna do to somebody who is suffering from the Craven effect.
especially mentioning a prequel to a photorealistic animation live action remake of a 1990s IP. So someone with the Craven effect, this could be the thing that fully sends her into the loony bin.
Yeah,
And
s
I don't know
and you
if there
just can't
still are
afford that.
loony, and I cannot afford that because insurance isn't going to cover it. The first thing they're going to do is deny, 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 deny. That is what the insurance company will do when I bring up my wife's Craven effect to them to try and get it covered.
Yeah.
Um, and so I will not bring up Mufasa to a woman in that mental state.
Mhm.
Um, but right now, I am on Christmas vacation. Imagine Chevy Chase with the lights all around him, getting shocked. That
Yeah.
kind of Christmas vacation. I am there right now with family, including several youngsters in this
Mhm.
house. I did, in fact, bring up, hey, while I'm here,
"Hey." Did you say
hey,
it like that?
I
"Hey!
said it like you got snap them into
You said,
attention.
"Hey!
Said, hey,
Hey!"
while I'm here, while I'm here, you got a BO boy here. Do you
Mhm.
want to go see Mufasa? No interest. No interest at all. And I said,
No.
I don't know if you remember Lion King. Mufasa is a prequel to the live action remake. Gone. Totally lost them.
Ran out of the
Totally
room.
lost them. You know what movies they asked about? Is there a Spider-Man movie? I was asked about, is there a Spider-Man? So just to throw that
Wow.
out there, Spider-Man, not that they didn't ask about the villains. No one asked about Morbius. No one asked about Madam Web. They did ask about Spider-Man. Is there a Spider-Man coming out?
So let's and not to beat up on Craven,
And
but let's
and
do it. Let's
and asked, is there a new Barbie? I
Okay.
did also get
That's
that
great.
question. Is there a new Barbie? So words I told them, the trades are reporting that Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig have presented a idea for the script for the second Barbie. I did tell the 4-year-old and the 7-year-old that Noah Baumbach is in fact working on a potential idea with Greta Gerwig once she finishes her Chronicles of Narnia movies for streaming. I told them that. They said, when does it come out? And I said, okay, now you're being ridiculous. There's no release date for it.
Yeah.
But they did not care about Mufasa in any way, would not want to see it. It would be a punishment for them doing wrongdoing. Like if they pulled the Christmas tree down
Mhm.
and had
Mhm.
to be disciplined, the punishment would be, now we're all going to see Mufasa.
Yeah. Now, quickly, because again, I don't want to. I was saying previously, like I don't want to beat up on Craven, but I do feel like this is instructive to movie studios. So your lovely youngsters, because
Yeah.
I don't want to identify anything identifiable about them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Other than they like Spider-Man and they're waiting for the Barbie sequel.
yeah. So these youngsters say a Spider-Man movie. We'd love that there was a Spider-Man movie right now.
Yes.
And what if you said, well, what if I took you to a movie about a villain who fights Spider-Man? And then they might get excited because they think, oh, well, then obviously Spider-Man will be involved.
Right.
And you say, no, no,
Right.
no, no. No, this is an R-rated movie about a Spider-Man villain and his origin before he even knew Spider-Man existed. If ever, he may
Right.
never know Spider-Man exists.
He'll never get to meet Spider-Man. Let me be frank with these kids.
Yeah. And they would say, uh, whatever they call you, we're not going to
Yeah.
identify that either.
Yeah.
Um, they would say blank.
Mhm.
Why would they do that? Why would they think anybody would want to see a movie about a villain that fights Spider-Man, but Spider-Man doesn't fight him?
That they would
And
be
that's
so
from the
confused.
mouth of babes. That's from the
Right.
mouth of babes. That is the purest of innocent questions, but incisive, because they're not going to mince words. They're not going to be like, well, I don't want to offend the Sony execs, and I understand like they're only working with the IPs that they have and the Marvel connection is, but no, their thought is, why would I ever want to see that? And that is a stupid idea.
Right. Right. And with a Mufasa, their thought would be, why would I ever want to watch the Lion King cartoon, but it's not a cartoon? And Pomona and Toomba are not in the movie. And I'll tell them, well, actually, is a photorealistic Pomona and Toomba who are in the wraparound for this Mufasa movie. They're being told the story, and we cut to them 3 or 4 times, and they don't sing, and they don't sing Hakuna Matata, and they're mostly just sitting on their butts listening to a story about the origin of an old man,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not actually cartoons and then I'd end this. If I were to say that to these youngsters, they again would look at me as confused as saying, let's go see a movie about a Spider-Man villain, but Spider-Man's not in the movie and it's rated R and you're not allowed to see it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, those are equally as confusing. The existence of Kraven the Hunter and the existence of this Mufasa photorealistic prequel with no Pomona and Toomba, no Elton John music. That's the other thing. I would have to
No,
tell
Elton
these
John.
kids that is what the 2019 live action Lion King remake. It had all the Elton John songs. This is no Elton John songs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they hint at Hakuna Matata in the notes of the score for this movie, but they ain't having Pomona and Toomba sing it
Yeah.
as cartoons. Pomona and Toomba are just sitting on a couch listening to this, and maybe like someone starts playing Elton John on a CD player in the background, and Pomona and Toomba say, no, 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 shut that off, shut that off. We don't have the
Mm-hmm.
rights to that for this
Yeah.
prequel. Shut that off. Shut that off.
Shut it up. Shut it off.
Shut it off. Shut
Turn
it
it
off.
off. Turn it off.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Pomona and Toombas, they start doing the George C. Scott. Turn it off.
yeah, turn it
Turn it
off.
off.
Uh, yeah, I mean, wow, that is, gosh. So
So
you
much
don't
going on
think
with this.
you don't think that this movie will have pause? You think
I
it's done, or you think it like, because what's the drop for this? Because it probably will be very small.
but it'll be a small drop. I don't think this is a last wish situation. Which, and again, the last wish I think opened a few weeks earlier in December, and then had a great December, had a great Christmas corridor. I just think that 35 million is a starting place. This was a movie that when they greenlit it, they probably figured, okay, it's not going to open at 190 like the remake did, but it's going to open to 100.
Mhm.
It's going to open to high 80s or 90s at least. This is opening to 35. So even a leggy run for this is what? It gets to 150 to 200 domestic
It's
for a
terrible.
Lion King movie. And I don't think it's going to do that. I don't think it's going to have those kind of legs. I think kids are just going to go see Moana 2 and see Wicked and see Sonic.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that is what families are going to do these next 2 weeks.
And I
And they'll
want
go see
to
a complete unknown because I think these
yeah.
kids are seeing Timmy all on social media. They're seeing him do College Game Day. They're getting the TikTok excerpts of that. They're seeing him on, all these podcasts
They saw him on
talking
Theo
about Bernie
Vaughn.
Sanders. Yeah, they saw him on these little kids saw Timmy on Theo Vaughn talking about Bernie Sanders, and they're going to want to go see Complete Unknown before they go see a Mufasa movie that doesn't have Elton John songs.
They're gonna wanna see Wonka as another singing man.
Yes. That is an easier pitch to kids than the prequel to The Lion King that doesn't have Elton John songs and doesn't have Pomona and Pumbaa, is to say, hey, the Wonka kid who you saw on Theo Vaughn, who you saw on College Game Day, he's playing another singing man. Boom.
Yeah.
Kids are like, yes, great. I love him. He made great College Game Day picks. He's talking up why we need a social safety net on Theo Vaughn, and he's Wonka. Great. Let's
Mhm.
go see him sing. Done.
Yeah.
Mom, dad, done. Let's do it.
Yeah. Man. Yeah,
I
we
think
haven't talked
Mufasa is dead. I think Mufasa
Wow. Well, he
is
is dead.
dead.
We know he is dead.
We know he's dead. But I think he's died in a way that was unexpected because we thought it was just Scar tossing his ass off a cliff. And instead, it is the Disney executives greenlighting a Mufasa movie that no one wanted. That's actually how he died. Died at the
Yeah.
hands of brain dead Disney execs. Died at the hands of Moana. Died at the hands of Wicked and Elphaba, and died at the hands of Sonic the Hedgehog. That is who killed Mufasa, not even
And
Scar. Scar is innocent. Hashtag free Scar.
free
You
score.
know,
Yeah.
they're doing the perp walk with Scar, and they've got 50 cops around him in vests and machine guns and walking Scar. And I say that's bullshit. Hashtag free Scar.
Well, here's the
Hashtag
thing
free
about
Scar.
Scar.
Didn't do
He
anything.
killed
Didn't do a goddamn thing.
No, he killed somebody that was already dead.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He killed a
Yes.
dead man.
Yes. Yes. And Mufasa, at the point when the Lion King story begins, Mufasa is dead because of this box office.
He was
Scar's
trying
innocent.
to Scar was trying to defuse a bomb. He
Yeah.
was like, "I kill this guy, maybe he doesn't get a prequel."
Right. 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 He
And here
knew.
we go
He
with this
knew.
prequel. Now, here's what I do wanna say, 'cause, it's sad. It's sad that we have to talk to these studios and these execs the way we
Mm-hmm.
do, because we think that they're not morons, to get to where they are, but they are obviously morons.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna make sure they know that you can still release big tentpole movies alongside each other. This is not
Yes.
don't take this as, well, Mufasa got killed by Sonic. No, we
Right.
know who killed Mufasa, okay?
Yeah.
It was not
Very
Scar.
true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So, that if people wanted to see this movie, they would see this movie. That's just the
Why
facts.
why they greenlit a prequel to the photorealistic version of the Lion King rather than, and I know there's been Simba's Pride and the direct to video sequels to the original Lion King. Forget those don't exist. They're not canon. That doesn't You do a sequel to that movie. You do a theatrical sequel to the original animated Lion King movies. That
Mhm.
is where you make your money. If that opened a theatrical, real version of a Simba led sequel, opened this weekend in 4,000 theaters, that movie is opening to 3, 4 times as much as what Mufasa prequel did this weekend. That is the problem. People did not want to see the origin of Mufasa. How Mufasa dies in the first 3 minutes of the movie everyone's seen. No one cares about how Mufasa became Mufasa. They care
Mhm.
about what's next for Simba, what's next for Pomone, what's next for Toomba. That's what they
Mhm.
care about. That is what these kids care about.
Yeah, they love Toomba.
And they don't want a movie where Toomba is just sitting there being talked to. Toomba is
Mhm.
a character who does the talking, does the singing. That is what the kids want. Not just Toomba sitting there and like a schlub. And that is what this movie gives you. Is here's a schlub Toomba sitting there listening to how Mufasa became the old man who dies immediately in the movie that you like.
Now, we gotta talk Sonic because we haven't talked Sonic at all, but and I didn't listen to the last 2 episodes, I admitted that, and I'm not
Right.
ashamed. I like BO Boys in its true form with the 2 of us together,
Yeah, and sometimes the true form
50-50.
also has Christopher or has Danny, but yes, yes, exactly.
I think fans would disagree, but, um, did you
Mhm.
posit our fans, which did such a great job of Paddington pissing on Captain America's shield, coming up with those
Mhm.
illustrations. Was there any talk of Sonic or Tails or Shadow or Knuckles pissing on Mufasa? Was there ever talk of that?
Wow. I think
Or does
that
that
we
get
have to
into like eroticism territory?
I think it starts to be a thing that people would be into.
Yeah,
Um
in the wrong
and
way.
in the wrong way. And I do think you don't want everyone to be pissing on everyone. So I would stop short
Don't
of
I?
commissioning that art.
Mhm,
Um But I do think there needs to be some kind of artistic interpretation of what happened this weekend with Sonic and Mufasa.
mhm,
Whether it is, drawing a version of like when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in Japan. That's kind
mhm,
of what Sonic did this weekend. He was the upset. He walked in. Was Mufasa sick from seafood earlier in the night, partying too hard, and didn't train properly? And Sonic came in, scored the knockout, and then Mufasa does whatever Mufasa does next and ends up in a
mhm.
bad way for the next 30 years. Um, that could be the way to go, but I don't know if it's pissing. I don't know if Sonic honestly, I don't know if Sonic could stand still long enough to piss on the beaten body of Mufasa. I think
True.
he's pissing while he runs. So I don't think that would really even work logically for Sonic.
Okay, so that famous photo would be Sonic standing over the prone, knocked out body of Mufasa.
Yes. Yes. I
Okay.
think that could be something that artist depicts for the next 20 years. Um yeah, Sonic
And he has to
open to
piss, but he doesn't.
he does piss, but he's moving so fast we can't even see it happen.
Yeah.
He's moving so fast that it's like it hits you, but you didn't see it.
Mhm.
Um, and speaking of the Paddington piss art, Paddington pissing on Captain America's shield, there was a new depiction of it that came in while you were on your leave,
Wow.
and I don't have our email in front of me, and I'm in a different location than usual. So the creator of that art, we will get to that on the next episode. We will prepare. I was not prepared to speak about that Paddington piss art, but there is now a third Paddington piss art that has come through that we have yet to discuss on the show because you were on your leave. We will discuss it. So
So it will
I'm sure
not be I'm it's not here when we're talking about it. It will not be in this episode.
it cannot be in this episode. It will not be on this episode.
It
100% will
cannot
not be.
be, or you
Both,
are
both. It cannot be. It will
and
not
you're
be. It
and
shall
you
not
won't,
be.
and you
And it is
okay,
not. And it is not.
okay.
But
So
we will
so
talk about that. We will talk about that soon. Right here,
okay,
you're not seeing it, and you definitely will not be. That is the case for sure.
okay.
On the
And you're
YouTube.
sure that I'm not seeing it?
I'm
'Cause that would make me
100%
look really
sure.
stupid if it's there and I don't see it, and,
It
like,
would,
I'm
but
acting like it's not.
I would love for that to be the case, but it also is not, will not be on the
Okay,
YouTube. We will talk
okay.
about that on a
It
future episode
it
and show it
better
on
not
that
be. It
episode.
better not be, is all I have to say.
It's not. It's
Okay.
not.
Better
It's
not be.
because I said it wasn't going to be.
Okay.
So, Sonic, Sonic,
Mhm.
Sonic, Sonic, opening to what is this? 62.
Yeah.
So lower. Then we expected Danny and I. We were high on this movie. I mean, it was one of Danny's most anticipated movies of the year. So he went high. I went about as high. We went in around 90. Sonic 2 opened to 72. This opens to 62. All that said, I think this is this Sing 2 situation. This is the Puss in Boots Last Wish. This is the Greatest Showman. This is a movie that is going to leg out huge the next 2 to 3 weeks and is going to end up still easily, I think, with the biggest domestic haul for a Sonic movie.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing is, we have to remember that these big opening weekends a lot of time were for movies that people didn't want to be spoiled about. People wanted to see the stingers, things like that. Like I think we're seeing lower openings for some movies because people are more okay with seeing it later. And
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily, I mean, I think it's good in one way where they're like, "Oh, my theater's still gonna be around in a week." Like,
Mhm.
that's positive for the AMCs and the Regals of the world in that people aren't rushing to the theater because they think that it's going to go out of business, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
thinking, "Oh, this is an institution that will continue, so if I have something else to do or another movie to see, there's still gonna be this movie next week." I think that is positive even though it seems a little bit negative when these openings are not as big.
Right.
Um, yeah,
And Danny is a huge Sonic fan. He is our chief video game correspondent. He's a video game guy. He, of course, is fully invested in stingers and spoilers for these Sonic movies. And there definitely is a fan base that is. I mean, this
yeah,
movie made 62 million. There's plenty of people who are like, I got to see it immediately because I want to know the stinger before it's on the internet. I'd still say overall, the Sonic movies are not the Marvel movies. They're not the
no.
Star Wars movies, in that there is a giant amount of people who have to see it opening weekend because of the stingers, or at least Marvel and Star Wars when people gave a shit. But
Or to
Sonic
know
is
that
still
Han
in the
Solo died, in the first one, and then,
right, right.
Luke Skywalker died in the second one, and
Right. They need to know that. They don't want to learn that from the internet or on a podcast.
yeah.
But the Sonic movies, I think, in the end, are still general interest, kids' movies and boy action movies. People are not, I think, on a big level, super worried about getting spoiled. They will see it
Mhm.
next week, you know. So I think that this movie, sure, you always wish that the sequels open bigger than the last one, but I don't think there's any issue with the Sonic movie. It is still going to do a huge multiplier, and I think it's easily going to make over 200 domestic and be the biggest Sonic movie of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
I mean,
uh,
the holiday corridor is gonna be very friendly to this Sonic
yeah,
movie.
yeah. I think these next 10 to 15 days, whatever the holiday corridor is, it's going to be Sonic first choice, Moana 2 and Wicked next choice, and Mufasa under those. And Mufasa might get to have a lot of screens because it just opened, but Mufasa is going to be fourth for families, and possibly fifth based on a complete unknown. These kids wanted to see Timmy Chalamet on the big screen.
Yeah,
But no, Sonic is fine. Jim Carrey is still a movie star in the world of Sonic movies.
completely.
And I think the conversation about Sonic is going to be more these next 10 days as we see the Day Days and the second weekend and the Christmas haul.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, there's Homestead. I don't think there's much to say about Homestead. It's an Angel Studios movie that did okay.
And they
Maybe
keep
we'll
on they
talk about it
yeah,
around Christmas, but I'm good with not spending any time on Homestead right now.
agreed.
Agreed. So email us, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com, if you have a Homestead point you want to make, because honestly, we could use that right now when it comes to Homestead. Give us something to talk about with Homestead. So you send us your Homestead hot take on behind the scenes gossip, whatever it is, predictions. Is there a Homestead universe, that cinematic universe that you think is coming out of this? We don't know. We're not talking
Yeah.
about it. So let
Yeah.
us know. The boboyspodcast at gmail.com.
Yeah. Bonnie,
Of
rate us. Give us something to talk about.
Yes, exactly. Social media, of course, at the BO Boys Pod on Twitter X, which is phasing down, but it's still out there. But Instagram, TikTok, that's where it's at. Wannabe VP of Interns, Christopher, killing it with the vertical videos, killing it with the guest hosting spot. This kid is doing great. So, of course, follow us at the BO Boys Pod. We are YouTubers. Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
So you got to get the whole story by watching the YouTube channel. I mean, listen, Clayton, I know you haven't listened to those episodes you weren't on, but if you do want to go back, you got to watch the YouTube version of Danny's appearance, because he was wearing the Sonic hoodie. He had Shadow merch. He had all kinds of Sonic merch that he was showing off to the camera. And the only way you could have seen any of that Sonic merch is by watching the BO Boys YouTube network. So that is why you got to watch on YouTube. You would not have seen Danny's Sonic hoodie unless you watch the YouTube video. And of course, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And I think that is it. I mean, my God, I got nothing left to say. Maybe other than happy holidays and Merry Christmas. But other than that, I got nothing left to say.
Well, Pat, I've finished, and you've said it all.
Great.
There's nothing left to be said.
All right. Well, I'm out of here. Going to
Except
Christmas break.
for until next time.
Will
Will
smell
smell
you
at
at the box
box
office.
office. Nailed it.
Nailed it.